Thank you so much, Amit. I'm really happy to be here at CELEC Asia. CELEC is one of my favorite communities in cell-based area, and happy to share with you guys what we do at Shiok Meats and how we're bringing cell-based crustaceans to the market. I think Victoria gave a really hard follow-up for me, but I'll try my best. And I think the work we do is really interesting, and I'm having a lot of fun building the company. So we started this, and I think we've all known about this as well, that the world population is continuously increasing, and by 2050 is expected to double that of what we had in 1990. And we eat so much protein in terms of meat, fish, and seafood, and you can see in a lot of the Asian countries from the dark blue marine color here that we eat a lot of fish and seafood in the Asian countries. And so Sandy and I were wondering how we can continue to feed the ever-growing population with sufficient protein and still not impact the environment negatively. Most of us should be familiar with this landscape that is often updated by kind of tech. We can see most of the companies focus on the red meat, white meat area, or multiple species. The seafood community is still relatively small, and Shiok Meats is part of the seafood community, and we have a unique position because our interest is in crustaceans, and we focus on the APAC market. And why did we start with shrimp? Most of us know and are familiar with issues in the raising of red meat and white meat, but not so much on the seafood side of things, and especially shrimp. So in the US, actually, 30% of shrimp products in grocery stores and restaurants are found to be misrepresented. So they're not from the country they say they're from, they're not the species that they say they are. And in intensive farming, a lot of harmful chemicals might be used, like antibiotics, hormones, fungicides, just so that we can grow as much animals in per square feet as possible. And is fishing much better? Unfortunately, not really. For every kilogram of wild shrimp that is caught, 20 kilograms of bycatch is sacrificed. And a lot of the frozen deshelled shrimp that we have in the supermarket are actually peeled by slave laborers. Fishing is unsustainable. We're currently overfishing, and the ocean is going to be depleted of the wonderful sea creatures in the next few decades. And wild-caught seafood accumulate all the ocean pollution that we have, for example, microplastics and heavy metals. And where does that go? That goes into the body of the consumers who eat wild-caught seafood. And on the business side, the crustacean market is really attractive as well. It's been predicted that by 2025, it will increase by 1.4 times to 150 billion. And Asia is actually a huge market for crustaceans. The rate of production has increased by 20 to 30% per year in the last 2 decades. And Asia Pacific is the leading shrimp producing area in the world. And when we look at processed crustaceans market, the Asia Pacific is also the biggest importers and exporters, including countries like Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, China, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. And in Singapore, we have a love for seafood and crustaceans. Most of you might have heard of chili crab. And in 2018, it's approximated that every person in Singapore consumed about 21 kilograms of seafood. That is a lot of seafood. And what are the other benefits of shrimp? Shrimp as a food source has very good nutrition. It has low calories, not much carbohydrates, and almost 90% of it is protein. So it's a huge protein source. So at Shiok Meats, our mission is to bring delicious, healthy, and sustainable crustacean meat. So we work on shrimp, crab, lobster, prawns, crayfish, and by harvesting it from cells instead of animals. When we started, we were the first and only Singapore and in South Asia working on cell-based meats, and we were the only ones globally working on crustaceans. And if you're not familiar, Shiok is a slang commonly used in Singapore and Malaysia, and it means fantastic and delicious. So Shiok Meats is better. It is an alternative and additional production process which lets countries like Singapore, Israel, to be able to have the ability to grow crustaceans with limited land and natural resources. We don't need to worry about global warming. We can control the environment independently. We have a faster production time, which I'll explain more in our process. We're sustainable. We use less water, less land, less energy. We don't need to use antibiotics or harmful chemicals, so it's more healthy for consumers. And we're ethical. We don't use slave laborers, and we minimize animal cruelty. The company Shiok Meats was founded by Sandhya and myself. We're both stem cell scientists with over 20 years of combined experience, and we founded the company in August 2018. Our team now has grown to over 25 full-time staff, consisting of scientists, engineers, food technologists, and management professionals and interns. And we actually have a full female C-suite it's not by intention, but that's how it turned out. And we have talents from all over the world and always on the lookout for talented people who love our mission to join us. So how did we start this journey? So it started off with an idea by Sandhya and one of our first investors advisors, Ryan Beethencourt, the CEO of WildEarth, and trying to think if we can make shrimp with stem cells. And with that, Sandhya and we left our full-time jobs, and then we brought our animals, our consumables, our little equipment, and took a little boat to St. John Island, which is about half an hour away from Singapore mainland. And there is where the marine life laboratories are held or hosted. And they were the only ones back then in 2018 who were willing to actually rent out some labs to us. And after we raised and proved our concept and raised some funding, we were able to get a lab from our previous connections, a previous director at Singapore Bioimaging Consortium, and we rented some lab space from them, and then we shared equipment as well. And after we raised our seed funding and when Innovate 360 was ready, we moved there where our current labs and offices are. We grew from one office and one lab space to now 2 offices, 2 lab space, and also a mini R&D plant that is in the works right now. So the technology at Shiok Meats is patented and owned and created in Shiok Meats. How do we make cell-based shrimp? It's similar to other cell-based meats, but we work with shrimp, crab, lobster, and prawns. So we harvest stem cells from a live animal, and then we give it the right nutrients and the right environment and grow them in little vessels. And when we have enough mass of the shrimp meat that we want, then we will separate it from the liquid nutrients, and the mass will be used for whatever dishes that we want. And this process is actually in the production phase only about 4 to 6 weeks, which is a lot faster than growing a full adult shrimp, which takes about 6 months. And for lobsters, that is a few years in time. So we're saving a lot of time and energy and nutrients to feed these animals, because we no longer need to grow the head, the eyes, the shells, the parts we don't eat, and we only grow the meat that we eat. We first showcased our siumais, our Shiok shrimp siumais, in March 2019, and some of you were there with us as well at the DFSS event. We got lots of good comments from it. And in last November, we showcased our Shiok lobster gazpacho, a Shiok lobster terrine as well, and also received a lot of positive comments. So why are we not in the market yet? I think these are issues that face for a lot of different cell-based companies, not unique to us. Lack of infrastructure. When we started, there wasn't even research labs that we could rent. Right now, there's one shared lab space in Singapore open for renting. The cost, it's very expensive. The first burger made by Professor Mark Post was $330,000. And for us, when we first made our siumai, it was $5,000 per kilogram. And so we're all working really hard to make it a cost that's friendly for consumers like you and I to eat on a daily basis. Regulations. Just is the only one in the whole world and good meats to be approved for sales globally. So outside of Singapore, it's not very clear how regulations will work out, but I'm positive that we might see some of the countries to be moving in the same direction as Singapore has. Do we have the right taste and texture? So for us, we don't have to worry so much about taste. It's inherent in the meats we eat, and even the liquid nutrients that we have has very unique crustacean flavoring as well. In terms of texture, when we look at processed crustacean products, that's not so much of an issue, like dumpling, all of that. But when do we get the 3D C-shaped shrimp? Can we get a lobster claw? So there's still a lot of work to be done there. Then we're working really hard with collaborators and also in-house as well. Capital, this is very capital intensive. When we built our own infrastructure, from the research labs to the factory as well, we need to continuously raise money. And finally, public perception. I think people are still not very familiar with cell-based meats. There's a lot of terminology out there. And for APAC, this is a huge question because we have so many different languages. How does it translate into Japanese, into Korean, into Mandarin? These are all different things we need to look into. And we need to bring down the price. Most of the cost comes in the liquid nutrients, cell culture media we feed the cells. So our key goal at Shiok is to move into a food-grade, sustainable, and cheaper media. And our goal is to reach the production cost of $50 per kilogram by end of this year so that we will be ready for commercialization. And are there any unique challenges for cell-based crustaceans? Yes, because there's very little work that's been done on crustaceans in terms of biology, genome, cell culture, compared to mammalian models for like red meat, white meat. All the cell lines, molecular tools, and equipment has to be done from scratch. So all of my staff and ourselves are doing a new PhD project in the research team. And do we know how and what kind of nutrients do we need to feed the crustaceans? And that's something that we're working hard on with partners and also on our own as well. And to bring down the production costs, setting up the scaling up technology, the regulations, and consumer perception, these are all things that cell-based companies all face. And we did a study in Singapore and found that 78.4% of Singapore residents were really keen to try cell-based seafood, and we're really excited about this. And for us, our portfolio will include shrimp, lobster, crab, and prawns, and we'll have frozen blended products like siumais, shrimp balls, dumplings, and can be used for fried rice, noodles, and we'll also have flavoring as well, which we can have seafood soups for our hot pot or laksa, all of the delicious soups that use a lot of crustacean flavoring, or even shrimp chips or keropok, things that are found in Indonesia as well. And here, Singapore is the first to approve lab-grown cell-based meats. And we also feel that Singapore should be our base, and that's where we're headquartered, because Singapore has a 30 by 30 mandate to increase local food production to 30% by 2030. So there's a lot of supportive grants, rebates, subsidies to help set up in Singapore. And we are in APAC a really good gold standard for food safety as well. And the Singapore food authorities have been very supportive of cell-based meats. And for us, after Singapore, we will look forward to expand into other APAC regions like Japan, Australia, Thailand, India, Most of APAC, we would love to have a regional hub because this will reduce the need to ship our products all over the world. And globally, we're looking forward to license our technology in the next few years and set up joint ventures and collaborations. We've raised up to 20.4 million up to date, and we closed our Series A last year in September. And here is a short overview of our journey. Shiok Meats was started by myself and Sandhya in August 2018. We've done a couple of prototype showcase over 2019 and 2020. We've closed a few funding rounds. And now in 2021 and 2022, we're working hard on scale up to build our manufacturing plant, setting up our own infrastructure, bring down the cost of production, get regulations approval, and then we will launch by end of next year in 1 to 2 high-end restaurants in Singapore. We're very grateful to be recognized by a lot of global names like Fast Company, Unreasonable Impact, Creative Destruction Lab, and be featured in a lot of media. And thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation, and let's get the world to eat cleaned.